In today's video, we're going to be talking about what do the nodes mean in my birth chart. Hi, I'm Charlie Starr. The video you are about to watch is part of my free course, How to Read a Birth Chart. And now, back to this video. Hey guys, and welcome back. We're going to start out by answering the question of what the nodes are astronomically. Second, we're going to briefly touch on the topic of the mean node versus the true node. And then we're going to talk about what the nodes signify astrologically in the birth chart. And finally, we will take a look at some examples. Okay, so first of all, what are we talking about? What are the nodes? The nodes are not a planet. They're a point that is looked at in modern times. It's a newer addition to the birth chart calculations. What it actually represents is the intersection of the ecliptic of the sun and the ecliptic of the moon. Let me explain. So we have all of the planets and the luminaries going through the zodiac belt, right? We've already covered this. So all of them are going through the same signs, which means that from our point on Earth, they're going along the same path, right? So when we have a full moon, the sun is opposite the moon. And when we have a new moon, then the sun is in conjunction with the moon. But why is it that we don't get an eclipse at every single full moon and new moon? It's because the paths are slightly off. So if you take the circle of the sun and the circle of the moon and you put them together, they actually only intersect at 2 points. The southernmost point of the intersection is called the south node, and the northernmost point of the intersection is called the north node. To be clear, all of the planets have nodes where they intersect each other, but we're going to be talking about the lunar nodes. And these are the nodes that are going to be represented and pulled up in popular charts today. In the birth chart, the nodes represent your karmic history and your karmic destiny. This is in the perspective of evolutionary astrology, which believes in reincarnation and views the chart through that perspective. So with that being said, the south node generally represents the past lives and the unresolved issues from the past lives, and the north node typically represents the karmic lessons to be had in the current life and where that person is going in the future. There's a little bit of debate amongst astrologers over whether it's the south node or the north node that the person is going towards. It's generally thought to be that the north node is where you're going and the south node is where you're coming from. However, after a couple years of taking a look at this, both in my own chart and looking at other people's charts, I would say that the debate is probably coming from the fact that these are two opposite polarizing points. And generally the life lessons has to do with both ends of the nodes, because ultimately you're going for like heavily leaning from one, which I found to be the south node, and then moving towards the north node. But at the same time, there's lessons that have to be learned about the south node as well, because you're essentially trying to balance out the themes of the south node with the themes of the north node. So both are important, and you're going to be learning lessons throughout your life that involve both of these nodes' symbolic implications. By far the best book that I've ever read on this topic is Yesterday's Sky by Stephen Forrest. I'll show you guys right here. So this book talks about evolutionary astrology, and this is one of Stephen Forrest's later published books, and he basically talks about the chart behind the chart, which is essentially using the south and the north lunar nodes as starting jumping points to kind of like read the chart backwards, and you're able to kind of like read the entire birth chart from the perspective of the past life issues and themes, and that will include a lot of different stuff. So predominantly when I do evolutionary astrology work, I start out by looking at the nodes, and then you take a look at, okay, where's the ruler of the south node, where's the ruler of the north node, what's aspecting them. I'll also take a look at Saturn, because Saturn is a hugely significant planet when it comes to karma and dealing with our karma and dealing with the things that we are here to learn. But anyway, that's just a little take on evolutionary astrology, which deals with this whole topic. But the North Node is generally a point that looks like a horseshoe that will be automatically pulled up in most birth chart calculations. And so that's why we're talking about it here in this How to Read a Birth Chart course, because it is a point that's going to show up when you pull up your birth chart, and it's on its automatic settings in almost every single app or website that I've seen will pull up the North Node. So the North Node is always going to be exactly 180 degrees away from the South Node. So the South Node is generally not reflected on the birth chart because you just know where it is based on the fact that it's going to be 180 degrees away from the North Node. True versus mean node. I'm not going to get into the astronomy of it too much, but you should know that there is a mean node that's calculated and a true node that's calculated. Generally in the birth chart, if it's a true node, it's going to have the horseshoe with a little capital T in the middle of it, and otherwise it's going to be the mean node. Now, what's the difference? I'm going to read just a little bit from the book that I just referenced, Yesterday's Sky by Stephen Forrest, on mean node versus true node. First of all, I think the most important thing is that this is only going to change the actual degree of the node by about 1 degree. So honestly, it's not a point that I really care about too much, because by changing it 1 degree, you're not significantly changing the interpretation or the meaning of the reading at all. So I'm not exactly a perfectionist when it comes to this type of thing. But it is something that's debated, and that you'll see true versus mean, and you'll have the option. So we're just going to take a look at it really briefly. So Forrest writes, the moon orbits the Earth. This is simple, practical statement and basically true, but it is actually more precise to say the Earth and the moon orbit a common center of gravity. That point is called the barycenter. Think of the Earth as a big, heavy man dancing with his little tiny wife. Both pairs of hands are joined and they are spinning around merrily. Because he is so much bigger, at first glance he seems to be stable and she seems to be orbiting him. But if you look carefully, you see it is not quite that simple. The center of this body is making little circular gyrotations as she pulls him first this way, then that. It is exactly like that with the Earth and the moon. And then he goes on, and then it says basically that the true nodes reflect that wobble and the mean node does not. So because of this wobble, that they're kind of like actually orbiting around this center, this like mutual center of gravity, one of the calculations accounts for that and one of the calculations does not account for that. The difference is only about 1 degree. For the majority of cases, this isn't going to make a big difference. However, Forrest does talk about what he likes to do if, for example, the degree actually does make a difference. Like say, for example, it's on the cusp between 2 houses or 2 signs. And what he generally does is he will interpret the chart both ways and ask the client which one feels more true. You know on an innate, deep level which stories and themes resonate most heavily with your experiences from an internal perspective. And that is honestly the golden bar of truth. When you're reading for somebody and you tell them, like, these are the themes, blah, 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 this is kind of what's going on, they're going to know, even if they don't remember their past lives, instinctively which story resonates and which story does not. So that would be my advice to you if, when calculating the mean versus the true node, you find some differences. Trust your gut, or if you're reading for somebody else, trust the gut of the person you're reading for. Here we have our first example chart. The North Node is at 2 degrees of Leo, and the South Node is not pictured. As I stated before, the South Node is not pictured in the chart because it's always going to be 180 degrees away from the North Node. It does look like this horseshoe, but upside down. 2 degrees of Aquarius is over here, and we can see that Saturn is at 6 degrees of Aquarius, making the South Node in conjunction with Saturn. Now, what is the North Node in Aquarius, South Node in Leo story? Well, Leo is the North Node, and that's going to represent the energy that is the least familiar to this person And Aquarius is going to be the energy that is the most familiar to this person. And so the journey of their soul is in exploring and balancing lessons that are along the axis point of Aquarius and Leo. What I found to be the case with this is that this has to do with conformity, and it has to do with expectation of other people on yourself. With Aquarius, this has to do specifically with conformity to the group, because Aquarius is the crowd. It's not the sign that's in the spotlight. It's the sign that is in the group and prioritizing the group and the needs of the group and the identity of the group. And so there's a pressure to conform. However, Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius, which means that this is an energy that has a lot to do with being different and being an individual and being foreign, alien, eccentric, compared to your peer group and standing out. Because this person has Saturn, the modern or the traditional ruler of Aquarius here, and Saturn does more have to do with conforming to structures. This person is coming from a place that is most likely out of this, most comfortable out of the spotlight, and also focusing on, because it's the third house versus the ninth house, more comfortable with learning practical skills, more comfortable working in a group, and more comfortable delegating and organizing, because Saturn is representing their past life energies. With the south node, with the north node in Leo, the new energy is the issue of being in the spotlight, being an individual. Again, it's like I said, very similar to the Aquarius lessons, which has to do with being an individual, standing out. But along with Leo comes the spotlight. Along with Leo comes the PR needs, the politician, the celebrity, the desire or pressure to perform for whatever the expectation of the group is. This is a very Leo thing. There is an expectation to be a particular person because you're in the spotlight. So I'm going to go ahead and say, like, this person probably was not a celebrity in their past life. They're being thrown into this experience for the first time, and they are dealing with trying to accept their own individuality, in contrast to pressure on them to be a specific person and to look a specific way, both to conform to the rules of the society that they are living in, and added pressure being put on them because they're in the spotlight to appear a particular way. Okay, with that being said, whose chart is this? This is actually the chart of Jodie Foster. So Jodie Foster was immediately thrown into their North Node life calling at the age of 3, where they became an actress. So they were put into this celebrity position, this spotlight position right away. And there is a couple aspects here that I just want to point out that are happening. So we have a trine to the sun, which is actually the ruler of the North Node, so that's important. And then we also have a sextile from the midheaven in relationships over here to the North Node. So with the sun, I pulled up a couple articles that I thought were really interesting regarding Jodie Foster. In one of them, she's talking about the films that she did. And the films that she did were very Scorpio, which she has that trine to her sun in Scorpio, which is the ruler of her North Node. So Foster has won 2 Best Actress Academy Awards, the first for her performance as a rape survivor in the 1988 drama The Accused, and the second for playing serial killer chasing FBI trainee Clarice Starling in 1991 horror film The Silence of the Lambs. Jodie Foster feels that her journey to these accolades started when she played an underage prostitute in The Taxi Driver opposite Robert De Niro. The themes of these films that she's in is like extremely Scorpio. So this is what she says about it, though. It's a difficult path. I have this sort of faith in things, and when the waves are difficult, it gives me depth. That's the way I view it as a writer, an actor, a director, and a producer. For me, Taxi Driver is a film which was a kind of transformation in the cinema, she told OK Magazine. Jodie Foster adds, it was the golden age of American film. It was an art house film, and I was very proud to be in it. And here's the important part that I thought. She says, it was destiny, it was fate, and I was very lucky. So these films that she was in, they are connected to her north node, and the north node is something that is seen as a fated destiny, a karmic destiny. Now, this sextile that she has with the midheaven in Libra, right here. So this is, Libra has to do with relationships. And during the Golden Globe Awards, she actually came out as a LGBTQ member. She didn't actually name it. She just said that she was out and proud and she has a wife. So people, like, she was very nervous about it. Let me read you what she said. I guess I have a sudden urge to say something that I've never been able to air in public that I'm a little nervous about, she said, but maybe not as nervous as my publicist. So I'm just going to put it out there loud and proud. I'm going to need your support on this. She said to Wrapped a Room, cameras showing some stars like Anne Hathaway weeping. So she came out. She was very nervous too. She didn't come out until she was 50 in her public life, though she was out in her private life for quite a large amount of time. So we see also the challenge with the public eye, with her, like all this pressure being put on her to conform to society's expectations of her relationships, from a publicity standpoint, from a conformist to the rules of the group standpoint. Another thing that happened to her in her life that I feel like is also describing her North Node is that she decided to go to school, and she studied different cultural backgrounds, which I think is a very Aquarius Leo thing to study because it's talking about like psychology of the self is very Leo, how people get the identities that they have. Aquarius is a sign of the group, so this can be like sociology. So she went into the humanities to study different cultures. And different cultures is also like a ninth house topic as well as higher education. This person, you know what I mean? She's a Sagittarius rising, so this is definitely involved as well. But she went and she did it, and she did it against the advice of her family, particularly her mother. They told her, don't do it, don't go to school, you need to focus on acting. And she did it, and she said that she didn't regret doing it. Another thing that she did was she became a director. She was an actress first, then she became a director, and it was another thing that her mother told her like not to do, and she did it, and she was glad that she did it. So that's kind of like stepping outside of the spotlight, and going behind the scenes, which was probably a place that she was like more comfortable with, but it was also a learning experience for her. So, you know, I mean, she was learning about like how different people interact. She's learning about different people's identities and cultures. Like all of these things to me are describing her South Node and her North Node. Here we have our second example chart. In this person's chart, they have their North Node in Cancer at 23 degrees, and their South Node is at 23 degrees of Capricorn. Venus is at 23 degrees of Capricorn, so it's actually in conjunction with Venus. This person would be very comfortable in Venusian energy, which has to do with luxury, you know, money, wealth, relationship, beauty, harmony, getting along with others, which is further confirmed by their Libra rising. But the ruler of their North House is in is the moon, and it's in the 5th house in Aquarius. So some ways that this could manifest is this person is desiring to become a mother, And they're also desiring to gain freedom because Aquarius symbolizes freedom. The mother is symbolized by the sign Cancer, and then also the fact that the ruler of the North Node is in the 5th house of children. So it may be this person's destiny to become a mother and also to work towards freedom. Freedom is an energy that they are probably unfamiliar with because we do have Capricorn. This is the sign of the father. This is the sign of control and structure. And this person has had to take on a lot of restrictions and responsibilities in life because the ruler, which is Saturn, is on their ascendant sign in Libra. So the freedom that Aquarius offers, being the ruler of their North Node, is going to be a new type of energy. Okay, anybody want to make a guess whose chart this is? This is actually the chart of Britney Spears. Okay, if you guys aren't familiar with Britney Spears' story, she was essentially enslaved and exploited by her own father as the celebrity that she has been in pop culture, for her music, for her beauty. And the number one thing that she wanted to do, that she has announced that she wants to do with her newfound freedom, now that she is free and no longer being controlled and restricted by her father, is she wants to have children. That's the number one thing that she's wanting to do with her freedom. She wants to quit her job as a singer, and to use her freedom to have babies. So I thought that was a pretty straightforward and interesting example there. And it looks like, based on the symbolism here, that being a mother is definitely in her destiny, which she already is mother, but she wants more. Okay, and that wraps it up for this video. If you enjoyed, please make sure to hit like on this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe so you can get more content like this. In the next video, we're going to be talking about Black Moon Lilith and what that means in your birth chart. Thanks for watching.